Hey friends, it's Simon Hurley, and I always come back to Perfect Pearls as one of my favorite products to add beautiful shine to your projects. So today I'm going to be sharing 4 different cards and techniques using Perfect Pearls to make them stand out on your projects. So let's get into it. Alright, so I'm starting off with the Bold Bouquet stamp set, and I'm just going to kind of share some of the basics to use Perfect Pearls and some of my favorite ways to apply them before we get into some of the newer techniques. So I'm starting off in my Misty stamping tool, and I like to use this sticky mat. I believe this one's sold out, but I'll link to similar ones down below that'll fit inside your Misty. I'm going to then place down my card base, and there's no room for magnets because I'm placing down my full background stamp here. I love this Bold Bouquet stamp, and this is the lined image, so I'm going to show some techniques with this. Now I'm starting off with VersaMark ink. You can also use a perfect medium, but this is just kind of a clear sticky ink that's going to hold on to the Perfect Pearls. I like to make sure there's a lot on here. That's why I'm doing this in my Misty, so I can stamp it twice to really pack on the ink to hold down the Perfect Pearls nicely. I'm going to use my pressure tool to make sure it evenly stamps, and then lift it off the surface. Alright, then I'm going to move into applying down my Perfect Pearls. Now here I'm using a small little detail brush, and with some of these lined images, I like to go in and do kind of like a painting with it almost. So I'll go in with a tiny little brush and fill in the areas that have that color. Here I'm filling in the leaves using 2 different shades of green and kind of a minty green color, and filling those in together. All you need to do is take just a tiny little bit of the Perfect Pearls out of the jar there and bring it onto your project. And a little bit goes a long way with this powder. You don't want to add too much down because any of the excess really can't go back into the jar. Now next I'm going to bring in other colors. For the florals, I'm going to color in some of the little dandelions using yellow. And then I'll bring in some pinks to the other flowers. You'll even notice that I added a little yellow center to some of them. It's a little bit time consuming, but it doesn't take too long, and it's pretty easy to do since it's just applying this powder really simply down. I like kind of doing this painting or detailed look though. Adding all these different colors really helps the design pop and stand out off the card rather than doing it in just one color of the Perfect Pearls. So once this is all complete, I'm going to then go in with a brush. This one you can see is quite damaged already, but it's just this larger brush you can buy along with some of the Perfect Pearls, and I'm going to take it and just kind of press in that powder. This is going to really ensure that it's going to be nice and stuck down to the VersaMark ink, and it's not going to move once it's kind of pressed in like this. Now, once we're done with that, I like to go in with this fan brush. I'm telling you, these tips are really helpful. This one's a Nuvo fan brush, and this is helpful because there's sometimes still excess that likes to hang around, and this brush I found is one of the best to just really sweep off that surface and get it all off without having any excess powder. Now to make sure that Perfect Pearls are set, you want to spray them with water, and they have an active binder in there then that kind of seals it to the cardstock nicely. So once I'm done spraying it with some water, I like to heat set it just because I'm impatient, but you can always let it dry as well, and then it'll be nice and on your cardstock and won't come off on your hands. Now to stamp my sentiment, I'm going to use the Thinking of You sentiment from the same stamp set, stamping that down in some black ink and then throwing over a layer of clear embossing powder to make it nice and finished, and I love the clear shiny effect that it gives. Then here is that finished card. Again, I love all that amazing shine and that really awesome technique of just taking the different Perfect Pearls and painting it in really detailed like that. I think it really brings it to life. For this next technique, I'm going to use the Fresh Cut Flowers Slimline background stamp, and I'm going to share how to take this line stamp and make it more solid, because I feel like sometimes solid images work really well with Perfect Pearls. For this, I'm going to use the new Simon Hurley Create Heart Cut stamping foam, and I'm going to use this heart shape to create the stamp. So with this stamping foam, you're going to want to heat it for 10 to 15 seconds to make sure that it's nice and warm. So I'm bringing in my heat tool here, and then once it's hot, you're going to press it into whatever texture you want. Here I'm pressing it into that background stamp, which will give me the reverse image, and it'll create a nice solid heart stamp with those details in it. So then I'm going to ink this up again with VersaMark, give it a nice amount on there, and then I'm going to press this down onto my black cardstock. Then when I lift it off of the surface, again I have that heart image with all of those details that don't have any ink on it. For this one, I'm going to go in with just a couple different colors, but instead of really kind of focusing on the image, I'm just going to add the different colors in stripes down onto the heart. Now for this, I really like it because, like I said, it gives a lot more surface area to apply your perfect pearls on. So if you have any images that are lined like this and you would rather have it be a super shiny image, you can take either your regular stamping foam or the heart cut stamping foam and turn that into a more solid image that the perfect pearls can really shine with. This creates that beautiful kind of heart medallion, and you'll see once this is done how much it shines. So adding those down into stripes, and then I'm going to again pat it down into the surface to make sure that everything is nice and set into the VersaMark ink. It just makes sure that whatever is going to stick down stays, and then we can take anything off and swipe off the excess here, using that little fan brush from Nuvo to really make sure that the rest of your cardstock is going to be clean. Then I'm going to kind of spray it down. I like to use this continuous fine mister to make sure there's no globs of water. I'll link down below to my favorite one, and it gives a super fine mist, which is really helpful if you struggle with that. So then I'll heat set this again, and then to finish off the card, I'm going to go in with my Fiskars Spring Assist scissors. I like this scissors because it kind of springs back out at you, so it doesn't make your hands tired, and it also has a fine point, so it's really great at getting into some of the smaller details. Here I just left a little bit of a border all the way around the heart, and then I'm going to create a background to stamp it on. For this, I'm using a little bit of my Woof Gray ink, and I'm going to just do a light stamping of the same background stamp, that Fresh Cut Florals, using a little bit of my pressure tool to make sure that it's going to stamp down nicely. And even though it's a slimline stamp, it fits really great onto this A2 size card, just leaving a little bit of a border on either side. I love how that turns out, giving it a nice subtle background, but it still ties into the rest of the card. Then I'm going to add that down onto some foam tape, and I'm going to stamp down the sentiment from the Sketch Flowers stamp set that says "Bloom where you are planted." I love how that finishes it off, and that almost medallion-like image on the front and center is so awesome that we were able to take an image and make it more solid so it can really shine. For this next technique, I'm going to do a stenciling technique where you can really, again, get lots of solid image to make the perfect pearls stand out and give it lots of surface area to stick to. Now, whenever I'm using layering slimline stencils like this Bold Blossom stencil, it has 3 different layers, so I actually cut down my piece of cardstock to the exact same size as these stencils. That way it makes the layering really easy because you just have to line it up with the edge. Now for this, I'm just going to go in with my VersaMark ink pad, and I'm just going to press it through the stencil like this. It's going to apply lots of that VersaMark ink to the surface, which we want, and it's just going to be a really easy way to apply that ink down through the stencil. Then to apply my perfect pearls, for this one, for the flowers, I decided to go in and create a center that was this yellow color. Almost looks like gold, but I really love how nice and shiny it is. Again, using that fine detail brush for this. And then I'm going to fill in the extra space with a little bit of the pink perfect pearls color. I'm going to go in just around and fill in the rest of the flowers with this. And whatever kind of is already down, there's no perfect pearls that's going to stick on top of that. So don't be worried about going over top of that yellow with the pink. It's not going to really matter. Then I'm going in with my brush again and stippling that down into the surface to make sure that it's nice and stuck to the ink before we go in and use our kind of sweeping brush to really lift off any of the excess. Again, I didn't really find a brush before this one that did this perfectly, where it really gets off any of the excess powder and there's no remnants of it. So then I'm going to spray on my water to make sure the perfect pearls is set, and heat set this before we move on to the next layer. We don't want it to be wet at all, because when we're applying our next color, if there's any water on the surface, it's going to stick to that too. So now to make sure that I'm lining up my stencils correctly, you want to make sure that you can read the title at the bottom, and then again, lining it up with the corners and edges because it's the exact same size as our cardstock. Then I'm going to again go through with my VersaMark ink. You could also use a blending tool or a blending brush if you want to, but I found that there was some finer detail in the stencil, and I wanted to make sure to get it, and this ink pad really applied lots of the ink on the surface, which is helpful when we're working with our perfect pearls medium, and we want it to really stick well. So then I'm going to go in with a little bit of green. This is kind of a nice minty green. I found that a lot of the lighter colors of the perfect pearls work really great on the darker colored cardstocks. So that's why I'm kind of opting for more of the brighter colors. But if you're using white cardstock, you can always use some of those more darker pearls as well. And those will really stand out on the white cardstock. So then again, I'm going to go in just finishing it off with this layer. And don't worry about the layer beforehand because we already had set it. It shouldn't affect it at all. Then I'm going to stipple this on, making sure to kind of press it into the ink there. Again, kind of repeating these steps, but it's important that you do every step like this. I found that it's really helpful. And then with this last layer, I'm again just applying that VersaMark ink through the stencil. And when there's little tiny details like those stems, that's where I find just applying it with the ink pad is important, because it'll get into those details, whereas a blending tool might kind of miss those sometimes. So then again, just finishing it off by applying down the rest of the green powder to fill in the rest of the design. I love how this one turned out. It really just stands out on that black cardstock. So then I sprayed it down to make sure it was nice and set, and you can see all that beautiful shine there. And again, doing that layering stencil in different layers means it was really easy to do it in different colors like this. Now I've cut that out and added it onto a white Slimline card base, and to press it down, I went onto the back of the cardstock to make sure my oils on my fingers weren't going to mess with the perfect pearls. I'm using a sentiment that says you are so much stronger than you think. I love this one. It's from the lovely Lantana stamp set, and I'm going to stamp it down with some black ink and again heat emboss it. So there we finished it off really simply. I love how it makes such an impact though, because it's just full of amazing shine and different colors from that layering stencil. Now for this last card, I'm going to go in with the Flower Picking Friend stamp set to get one of those really bold florals that's going to stand out as a focal point. For this one, I'm stamping it down again using my black ink. I'm going to ink that lined image up and then stamp it down onto some of my stark white cardstock. For this image, I'm going to go in and do my heat embossing again, some clear heat embossing, we'll always do it. And then I'm going to heat set that until it's clear and shiny. For this reason, I'm actually going in and doing a little bit of watercoloring, and I love to do heat embossing to make sure the black lines stay nice and crisp, and it also acts as a barrier to make sure nothing's going to go outside the lines. Then I'm going to add my inks down onto my craft sheet to create a little bit of a palette, just smooshing down the colors that I can dip into. When I do my watercoloring, I like to go in with water first, so you'll see me go in with my brush here and just lay down a little layer of water. This is going to prepare the cardstock and make it ready to take ink, because if you add ink down right to a dry surface, it's not going to move and blend, and it's just going to sink right in. Whereas when we apply our color down now that we're on a wet surface, it's going to give us a little bit more time to move around our color and blend different colors together, which is super helpful. I started off by applying down a little bit of yellow ink, and then I'll move down into some pink here. And again, since that cardstock is wet, it's going to make it really easy to kind of blend those colors together and make sure that there's a seamless blend between all the colors that we're using. So applying those all down to the different petals. And then once we're done, I'm going to kind of go back in with a little bit less water and more color to add a little bit more shading and vibrancy. Here you can see I'm going back into the center to just apply a little bit more yellow to make it brighter and stand out more. I'll do the same thing with the greens down there, applying a wash of the lighter green color after applying down the water. And then to add a little bit more contrast, I'll go in with a darker green. I like to add a little bit of shading with less water as well to really make those colors stand out and pop off your card. So then I'm going to heat set this. Again, you want to make sure that things are nice and dry, because water is going to bind that perfect pearls to the surface of the cardstock and make it stick. So we want to make sure that there's no moisture left. Then I'm going in with an Emboss It pen from Ranger. This is the clear sticky ink, but in a pen form, which is really cool. So you can write your own sentiments, create your own designs. And in this case, I'm going to go into the center of the flower, add little dots, and then also add kind of lines and streaks to add details and shading to the flower. I went in and kind of colored in a little bit of the center of the flower, and then I kind of followed some of the petals upwards with little lines and stripes. You want people to see exactly where you're drawing, but you can kind of see it in person. It's going to be a little bit glossier than the rest of the surface. So then I'm going to go in with my Perfect Pearls powder, and again that fine detail brush, and apply that powder down. For the center of the flower, I'm using again this kind of sunflower sparkle color, which is a beautiful gold color that's going to make it shine on the center. Then I'm going to pounce it in to make sure that it sticks down to that ink, and then I'll brush it off with my sweeper brush. Then making sure that all the excess powder is off there, and then I can go in with a little bit on my leaves as well. For this, I'm going to apply down just some lines and streaks, and again, I'm doing this in separate layers to make sure that that yellow doesn't end up where the green is going to be. Here I'm then applying down that kind of minty green color, which I really like, spreading that down over top of any of the areas that we had colored in before to add that little bit of detail. And then we can again do that little pouncing method and swipe off of the surface there.
and just make sure that the surface is nice and clean. Then I'm going to kind of, again, start wafting my cardstock and spray that down with my nice fine mister, and then heat set it just because I'm impatient and wanted it to dry nice and quickly. That's going to bind that down to the surface, and there we have that beautiful shine in the center. I like it because when it's not tilted, you really can't see it too much, and then it just brings a ton of shine to life on your cards. Then I'm going to go in and fussy cut this out. Whenever I want to add a little bit more detail to a card, I like to kind of fussy cut one half of the image out. So leaving half of that white cardstock on and then half of it off is going to create it so that we can add another colored card base down. To add the background, I'm going to use this water marble background stamp from Simon Hurley Create and stamp it down in an orange roar color and stamp it down onto a tomato soup card base. This is going to give me a nice tone-on-tone effect, so it's going to be kind of a subtle design in the background. It's not going to really pop, but I find that adding down little details like this really bring the card to life. It's those little details that you notice afterwards that really make the card step up to another level of design. Then I'm going to stamp down my sentiment. This one is from the same Flower Picking Friends stamp set, and it's just a simple thanks sentiment. I love how this one turned out with that dual tone card base and also that awesome shine. Again, that pen is so amazing that you can draw your own details and really bring the image to life with the perfect pearls.
Alright guys, I hope you really enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up and leave a comment down below letting me know your favorite card. Also down there is a link to a full supplies list of today's video supplies, so if you want to go shopping, those links help support me and I really appreciate you using them. Thanks so much for stopping by and spending time with me, and I'll see you very soon for another card making and crafting video. Have a great day. Bye!